Hi, Russell.
Good afternoon or good evening
How
from
are
your
you?
perspective. I'm doing well.
Yeah, for my side, good evening. Good to see you, and thanks for being so accommodating this week.
Yes, it happens to all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Please just give me a second. There
How
seems
long
to
will
be
our
some
show be
freezing going
on?
on. Max about an hour. It
Okay.
depends. Can be less, can be more.
Okay.
Yeah. How long do you have?
I have as long as you want. Uh, what is the main subject of your show?
So it's a creative show for all forms of creatives. I started off with musicians, and then I worked myself into writers, and then there's all kinds of creators that comes on here. They share their work, they share their journey. It's meant to inspire, other up and coming independent creators out there.
And you're an artist, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
You're a painter. Are those your paintings?
No, 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 no. I'm a music artist. I'm a music artist, but I do design, but not like your traditional way of painting. I do design, but I come from a musical background.
And
So I've got my own independent record
what
label.
is your musical? What's your type of music?
I mainly produce hip hop.
Okay, that's very
I
cool.
don't play any instrument. Like I have a studio piano that I do use. That's just meant for production, not your traditional piano. But yeah, I mainly focus on hip hop when it comes to production. I am branching out. But yeah, and I'm also a DJ as well.
Very
So
cool.
that's actually where I started off. I feel like this has become your podcast. Maybe you should look into it and I can be your first guest.
Mhm. Maybe.
But I mean, yeah, it's good to have you on. So there's two questions to this quote, that I'm going to say out. So you're critically acclaimed author plus lawyer and
That's a
lawyer.
nice thing.
Which came
Yes.
first?
The
Which came
lawyer
first?
and the
Author
writer,
or
they
lawyer?
came at the same time. They all bubbled up at the same time. But
Yeah.
I came from a blue collar background. So I had to figure out how I was going to make a living and have a career, right? And you're an artist, so you know the truth. It's very difficult to make a living as an artist.
Yep.
It's much easier to make a living as an attorney if you have that skill. And I had a skill at both making great grades, which got me into top law schools, and I had a lot of skill in the battle of the courtroom, which is really the thing I love the most about being a lawyer was the war.
Yeah.
So that was how I had my career. The writing, though, I was always into writing, and I can tell you a story. This is a perfect example. So when I have you ever heard of the town Lubbock, Texas?
Texas.
Yeah, you never heard of Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock's way up in the Panhandle where it snows maybe 10, 15 times a year. And so there was a riot out in the snow because it started off as a battle between dorms of snowball war. And as what 19-year-old guys do, right? And the police came and tried to settle it down, and it turned into a riot. And I was in my dorm, and I decided I'd never been in a riot. I'd never seen group think like that. I wanted to go down and get in it. And I have a whole story about what happened during that. But after it was over, I went back to my dorm and wrote it down for 2 hours so I could remember it because it was something I needed to remember in case I ever wrote about it. So even then, when I was
Yeah, yeah.
working on my law career, I was already thinking about writing. So it's something that came together. And I would start books, during my career of, you know, building a career, building a family, raising children. I'm married to the same woman for 41 years, believe it or not. I was a divorce lawyer, but I was married to the same woman for 41 years, which is weird. I would start these books, but I'd never finish. Right. And when my youngest
Uh,
son, when I was 50, went off to college and I was finished raising kids, uh, he patted me on the back and said, "Dad, you need to finish that book. You're running out of time." So I finished the first
yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah. Nice. So that it was book one of your murder series.
Yes, Murder for Me.
Was that your first book ever, like published?
That was the first published book, not my first book. There was actually a book finished after I turned 50 before that. But after I finished it, I went on to the second book because the first book turned out to be more of a character development. And so I went on to the second book,
Right,
which
right.
is the second part of the story. And then Murder by Storm, the book that I, recently won the award on, etc., uh, was the next in the series.
And what was the like time frame between book one and book two? After like your
Well,
character developed. So you had Murder by Me and then Murder by Storm.
right. Oh, I'm not, I don't write a book in 6 months. It takes me much
Yeah, yeah,
longer.
yeah.
It probably took me 18 months to finish the book, but that's not the problem in publishing. And you know this because it's this truth in music too. From the time you finish a book or a series of songs to get them published right, and to find someone that will publish them that you can trust, that's a long time. And so I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
through a couple of publishers after I finished Murder by Storm until I found the one that I have now, Plum Creek Press, that knew how to handle it correctly. And uh, they reissued Murder by Me because they wanted the covers to look the same, right? Since it's a series, so they
Yeah.
uh, republished Murder by Me, and then uh, published Murder by Storm, and the whole
And you never you, oh sorry, can continue. Continue.
no, you go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, so you never considered to be an independent publisher since you
Yes,
also
I
had a
did.
background of law.
No, I did. I published the first book independently because I'm way too contrary uh, to be too cooperative and too. I've always been a contrarian. If everyone says you need to do something one way, I usually want to do it the other way. So I published my first book independently, but it sold like 25,000 books independently. So it was real successful. So I had a lot of publishers
Nice.
wanting to publish my next book and to republish the first book. So yes, the first one was independently. In fact,
Nice.
I had an author call me, Kino, a couple of days ago wanting advice. How do I do it? How do I do it? And I told him,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
go ahead and publish the first book independently. If you do it well, you edit it correctly, uh, publishers will come for you after that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So being an independent, you want to share like some advice, for up and coming authors. So you recommend authors to publish first independently. Like what tips can you share, like with regards to editing? Okay, we live now in this technological era where we have AI, we have ChatGPT that's out there that can assist if you use it correctly. But what are your methods that you use to successfully edit your books to sell, up to 25,000 copies first time around, because
Okay.
that's phenomenal. That's awesome.
Well,
You know,
here's a few of the tricks. The most important one is you need to start off with a high quality human editor, because what you're putting out there has to be right. And also, you don't want to put out a piece of garbage. And you won't, if
yeah,
you want the world, eh, part of being an author, in my opinion, is publishing, because basically you've got to let the rest of the world see whether you're stupid or smart. You got to expose yourself. That's a part of it. It's like your music, right? If you're just playing in your
yeah,
garage,
yeah,
that's one thing. But you want to get out there and let people hear what you're making. Well, if you're writing, you have to have an editor. Now, I got to tell you, I don't have a cozy relationship with my editors. I hate my editors because they come back to you and they say this is wrong and this is wrong and that's not how it would. And then you got to you got to go back and re-outline the whole book, or fix the chapter. And it, I'm always angry at editors. I had one editor one time.
yeah,
We were meeting in a cigar store, Keno, and she came in and she threw chapter 7 and 8 at me. Said, "I'm tired of telling you this." And the whole cigar store goes, "Whoa." And I looked at them and I said, "That's just my editor." And they were like, "Oh." So it can be a hard relationship, especially if you're working hard to get it right. But it is a necessary relationship. So the first step after you finish your manuscript, and you can't, I'm not talking about friends or family. You can't trust them. They love you too much. They'll lie to you.
yeah,
You need
yeah, yeah,
someone who will tell you this is crap. That's not how it's done. And so you can work on it and make it better and make it what you really dream it to be. So that's the first step. Then the next step is you need, there's writers conferences everywhere. There's writing conferences around where you're at, all around the world. You need to start
yep,
going to those writer conferences and meeting people, because let me tell you, and I know this is true in the music world too, 70% of the people that are going to offer to help you are sharks. And you've got to learn who the sharks are and who they are not, because you've got to find people that really intend to help you to work with. So you need to start
yeah,
going to conferences and meeting people so you can find people that will really work to help you and not just steal from you or take your money. And I found a lady that could do that at a writing conference in Houston, Texas. And she helped me get an editor and then get another editor until we got it right. And then we got a cover and we downloaded it. And then we publicized it, because here's the next thing after you download the book is there's millions of books out there, just like there's a million songs. And the challenge is you have to get your book in the attention of those that are interested in it, in the sea of books. And the question is, so
yeah,
how do you do that? And it all comes down to the magic that we all live by, but not everyone knows that we live by. And that's called algorithms that controls everything. And you've got to understand, like on Amazon, you put your book on Amazon. Now that Amazon has algorithms about your book and about all the people that get on Amazon to buy books. And you've got to understand how your book matches what readers that would be interested in your book. And then you've got to work on the algorithm. You've got to learn how to work on the algorithm and how to pawn the algorithm so it promotes your book. Because what you want is when a reader that might be interested in your book gets on Amazon, uh, or an album, by the way. I don't even know. Do you call it albums anymore, Kino?
You do,
Mm.
you do call it albums, except like it's online albums now. You know,
Right.
so
So
like your
you
physical
got to
albums
figure out,
anymore.
you got to
Yeah,
figure out when someone goes online that their algorithm says they would be interested in Murder by Storm. How do I get Amazon when they're on? And you always see those little pop ups that say, if you like this book, you may like these books. How do
yeah,
you get
yeah.
on that list? Well, that's the challenge, right? And so you do that by penny advertising. It's just a few pennies if someone clicks on your book, and that's the only time. You've got to get involved in that, figure out how do you attract them, how do you get higher up on the list on that. And that is all you because no one's going to promote you. Maybe 15, 20 authors on the top five publishing companies have, uh, have people that promote them from those publishing companies. The rest of us, it's you. You have to promote
Yep.
you. And you do that. So you have to be on there. You have to become an expert, or you have to find people in the network that you build that understand it and can help you. And you have to get on podcasts. And you have to figure out, well, how do I get on podcasts? How do I find Keno? Right? I'm sitting in on a mountainside in Georgia right now. How do I find Keno? How do I get him to let me be on his show so I can talk about my book? And that's you have to do that, or you have to find people that will help you do that. And that is so if you independently publish a book, if you're fulfilling a dream and you've edited it and you've been going to book conferences and you found people that's shown you how to do it and to help you and to explain the algorithms, then you have to get on there and you have to uh, promote yourself. And I've never been one big on going to, you know, food fairs or things like that, promoting my books at a table because I'm a mathematician. The math doesn't work. I'm interested in algorithms that on the internet promote me to thousands or hundreds of thousands because that's the best use of my time and money. And
Yeah.
so the way you do that is by being on the internet on either podcasts like with Kino or uh, uh, figuring out on things like Amazon how if when someone buys book one, you can get your book to for Amazon say, well, if you like that book, how about this book? And it's also to understand who are your consumers. I know that 80% of the people that read my books are women. I know that they're over 35 years old. I know that most people that buy my book, they don't just buy my book, they buy two or three or four books at a time. I know that. You have to get on the and you can actually access and see those sort of things. And then you have to uh understand that in your marketing campaign.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
This
sounds a
all
lot
comes down
harder.
to,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's all about the data. You know,
Yeah.
that is why, with the podcast itself, I was so keen to move into authors. Like I had musicians, I had label owners, I had individuals who were more involved in the music industry. But I was so keen to move into writing and authors because I knew there wasn't much of a difference when it came to the business side of it. So just like the music industry, you need to focus as much as the creative side is fun, you're passionate about it, but 80% of your time needs to go into the business. As you said, like I couldn't have said it more perfectly, focus on the algorithms. Okay. It's so critically important, even with music. I mean, there was a guest I had last week. He's in the music business. He mentioned the same thing. He spent months on YouTube, just listening to other people talk about how algorithms work and what you can do and where you should actually be investing. He spent time, months again, listening to guys who were experts on Facebook ads, Instagram ads, so he could also beat those algorithms, and it worked out for him. Now he's a marketing executive. He's like a guru when it comes to marketing music. So that's so critically important. And also what you mentioned about the demographics of it, the age group, understanding your audience, so important. Like, thank you for sharing that. Um, Very, very important.
I can't
I
imagine
agree.
that authors are as fun to interview as musicians, though. I can't imagine that. It must be a lot more fun to interview musicians because they're just cooler people.
I guess any form of creative is awesome to interview, and I've been so lucky or blessed, whichever word you want to use, to have passionate individuals come onto the show. They not only chat about their creative work, but also share their knowledge on the business side of it. What they've gone through, what methods they're using. I mean, this is why my podcast was actually created for that specific reason. And the
And
similarities have just been like so amazing.
and it's quite exotic. At least for me, I was so excited to be on your show because uh, it's a South African podcast. I'm so excited about that. It's exotic. I've been promoting this. I cannot wait to promote this interview and promote your podcast because it's very exotic.
Thank you.
Uh, and I have contacts all over the United States from the writing, right, followers, and uh, to get to expose them all to this podcast, I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, no, that means a lot. That means a lot. That's the thing about it, like, just off topic but like, this is why we all in it, to network, to assist each other, to help each other so we can all grow, in different ways and forms. That's what the industry, all creative industry is all about now. This thing about, or this traditional way, like how the music industry used to be, about competition and all that, it's outdated. You're not going to grow that way. You're really not going to grow. So I
And,
do appreciate that.
and that is also why if someone wants to get started in this, they have to get out. They've got to get out and get
Yeah.
to, in my case, things like writers' conferences. They don't have music conferences. What do they have for in music that's like a writers' conference where you can network with publicists and producers and other authors? What do they have like that in music? Where do you go? Because that's what you have to do if you want
So
to start
like
writing.
like it's all, yeah, yeah. Also, okay, so like, just to like just talk about what you just asked me about, what do they have in music. So when it comes to music, you get like small workshops, like in South Africa. You get like these, you can go to different schools where there's lessons, and you get like a mainstream artist like in South Africa will come in and share a few tips when it comes to music production or DJ. But for me, how I developed myself was online. Like, I started networking with artists, with producers, with entrepreneurs within the industry, globally, online. My mindset, like, was different. It switched. Like, I never like keep myself like, stuck within just the borders of like South Africa. Like, and that's the mindset I'm actually trying to change. And going back to the data, if you look at the data for my podcast, or you look at the data for my music alone, South Africa comes in at like, number 9, number 10 on the list. The US is at the top. You'll have Canada, you'll have, a few European countries. And, even though I'm based here, my audience is in different countries. You don't really get that full on support, when it comes to your local community crowd. Or maybe, my message is controversial, or, my music can also be controversial, at times, but it's a
Well,
different
that's a
type,
good thing to be controversial.
Yeah,
You're
it is.
finding a niche.
Yeah.
That's called a niche in
Yeah.
marketing, right? And that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it was all about, global. I started with one person who was doing, online courses. It was actually Rick Barker. He was the former manager for Taylor Swift. So he's now doing like educational courses for independent artists when it comes to music marketing. I started off with him. From him, it led to someone else that I saw that was online, and he shared, a profile about someone else. Then I started, networking with that guy. And then it just like continued and continued and continued. The next thing I know, you just start like climbing the ladder. You start meeting people who you've never dreamed to have met with, even though it's, online. You find yourself on online workshops that is international, it's global. You're meeting and interacting with people there. And that's how I started to actually grow. So, my mandate when it comes to like the South African creator space is quite ambitious, but it all comes down to mindset. I can only go so far. But if more people and creators just start, switch and start educating themselves and getting more familiar with how the game or the business actually works, they're gonna, find more growth with that. I mean, I started off my podcast in 2021. This was me being consistent each and every single week, every Sunday, sitting down alone and doing a podcast that was 1 hour, 30 minutes. 2021, 2022, 2023. It was only in 2024, just before middle of 2024, that an agency, looked me up and be like, "Oh, can we promote your podcast for you?" And this was only like what's the word I'm looking for? It was only yeah, specific word I'm looking for completely. It was, I'm going to use another word. It was strictly for the music space. Okay, it was strictly for the music space. It was, put out there for independent artists, any form of artists, within the music industry to like, reach out to me. And from there, it was like interview after interview. Then I had all these global figures, coming onto the podcast. That started. And then, authors came along, Mickey came along. And it was okay, cool, let me branch out into authors now. But if it wasn't for that consistency of 3 to 4 years being alone on the podcast, would that have happened for me? And now also back to algorithms. The more consistent you are with, uploading episodes, then you get onto this website, and then you're on this website, then you're in the top 25 of this website. All that assists now. And then, someone is there, the algorithm works in your favor because you get the agencies that are looking for podcasts that will fit with their clients. Boom. There's Kino. Let's reach out to Kino. And that's how it worked for me. So when it comes to investing, it's going to cost you time or money or both. Okay.
Or both.
So for me, it costed me more time because I wanted to do things organically. Was there certain platforms that I invested in with money to boost our presence, for the podcast? Yes, of course. But I also wanted to be consistent. And that's what like really, really helped me. Like if I wasn't consistent with my work week after week after week, no matter who was listening, if I had one listener or I had 10 listeners, it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to get behind the mic. I wanted to share what I'm doing right now in the music space. I wanted to share with people what was happening in the global music space. And so, I'm just like, being in sync with you now about that algorithm, how it can work, time, money, or both. So even if you're up and coming creator, my message here would be is that even if you don't have the funds to invest, into the algorithm or whatever platform, even ads, if you want to invest in ads, you can do it organically by just being consistent with your career because you're passionate about it.
And therefore, you've answered your own question about what should you do if you have a book and you want to start publishing. It's the same answer, right?
See, the similarities again.
Yes.
That's it right there. The similarities again. I mean, the same struggles that independent authors go through and independent musicians go through, it's the same. It's the same. We're just playing a different, it's a different product that we're pushing out to market, but the process, the procedure is the same. So I get that. And I also get where like publishers also come from, like, the example you mentioned, how she came in, and she was screaming. So like in South Africa, I'm also registered as an independent publisher. So also I work independently, but I work with like several teams, different independent labels. I will like have the vision as a producer. Okay, this is what I want the next project to actually be. I will pass it on to the singer songwriters, or I'll pass it on to the engineers next, depending where we are in the pipeline. And then, of course, it'll come back to me. I have to like make the final call. Is this ready to go out to market? And I'll be like, nah, we can fix this and we can fix this. So I get where publishers also come from. Like, we want to get this perfect for market. Of course, sometimes you reach a stage where, okay, you know what, I've tried all angles I could. Let me just push this out to market and let me hear what the audience have to say. And as a creative, you may relate to this. We can be our worst critic because we never satisfied with our work. We feel, okay, no, we can always do better. We can always do better. Uh, the negative aspect to that is that we take too long to get our product out to market. We criticizing ourselves for long, not even realizing that, this thing could be cool. I mean, there's times I've released music where I wasn't happy with it, and I'm like, in a week, there's like, 20,000 streams.
I gotta tell you a story. I gotta tell you a story. We're absolutely the same. My children are all adults. And I remember I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to write before people bother me, right? And get my work done. And I remember there was one day, sometimes, and you know this with your music, some days your music, it's not right. You're not happy with it. You can't get it. Some days you finish it, it was a day. And some days you you finished your work for the day and you think, oh my God, this was spectacular. It was a spectacular day. I remember after one of those days, I was talking on the phone to my son and said, this was probably the best writing day I've ever had. This chapters I wrote, the paragraphs I wrote today were the best I've ever written. And his response, Keno, was, well, that'll last till tomorrow morning. Because he knows that so many times I wake up in the next morning, oh, that was crap. And it's just like what you just described. That's a part of it.
Yeah,
And sometimes you have to, and even if you wake up the next morning, you have to go on to the next paragraph. You can't delete that paragraph and start over. And
yeah,
you've
yeah,
got to know when
yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, you just your final nail on the coffin with that. That's it. Every day you wake up is like a new day. The worst thing you can do is, as you like mentioned, is go backwards. We can't go backwards.
But have you done that? Because I have, and it was a big
Yeah,
mistake.
yeah. That's the thing. We learn from our mistakes. The guest we had on another podcast yesterday said, "You look, we human. Okay, we're supposed to make mistakes as long as we learn from them. So we just need to know, okay, when to know." And this is about understanding, that being an independent in this industry is also understanding that you're also an entrepreneur within this industry. So you have to start thinking like an entrepreneur as well. And sometimes
Absolutely.
if
That's like
something sounds
rule
good the
one.
first time, yeah. If it sounds good the first time, okay, if I listen or if I read something and it's sounding wow to me the first time, go with it. If it hits you the first time, the worst mistake we make is reading over and over and over, because our brain is automatically looking for things that are not even there, and it's creating it. And then you're gonna be like, oh, okay, I can change this and I can change that. It's like I remember when I used to release DJ mixes and I should listen to it. The first time I listened to the mix, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. You start dancing, you're excited about it. Just like how, you wake up and, you write the paragraphs. You're like, I wrote awesome paragraphs. Then, you listen to it the second time and the third time. Like, nah, this thing is not sounding right, because your brain has created stuff that's not there. That's the worst thing we can do as creatives.
Yes. And that's one of the rules about a first draft when you write. Don't go back, no matter how bad you want to. And I've broken that rule and I've paid for it every time that I've done it. You just got to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
on your first draft, just go forward.
Go forward. Thank you. Thank you. Listen up, audience. Go forward. Go forward. So, um, I would have, okay, not would have, I did assume. Okay, I assumed you were more of a criminal attorney at first
I did
until I was
divorce
reading
and
more.
criminal
And then I'm
because if
like,
you do divorce law, Keno, you also do criminal law. They go hand in hand.
okay, so at least my assumption paid off for me because I mean, I look at your murder series, I'm like, attorney, yeah, criminal attorney vibes, yeah. Because even though these books, okay, your book or books can be labeled fiction, for me, there's a dotted line to non-fiction. Okay, when you come up with these murder stories and murder mysteries, okay, there has to be some case or cases that you have come across in your life that actually initiated to come up with like the storyline for these books. I feel like fiction stories, especially thriller or even horror, there's a dotted line of non-fiction.
Okay,
Would you
I have
agree
to tell you a
or
story about that. I have to tell you a story about that. About the book Murder by Storm. Okay.
yeah.
So I practiced law for 41 years in Houston, Texas. We had to ride out 5 hurricanes during the time I lived there. When you go through a hurricane, you see things that you would never believe you saw. And you wouldn't believe it if someone told you about it. Like when a manhole blows up and the water spews out like a fountain 2 stories high. That's something you got to see. Or when you walk down the middle of the street and all the gutters are spewing water like fountains on both sides of the street, and you're walking knee deep in the water, and red fire ant beds uh, nest are floating down the street. Uh, maybe a million ants at one time, and to see the way Houston, Texas is a city that there's 160 different languages spoken. It's a very international city. Diverse religions, races, languages, and incredible international food because of it, by the way, Kino. But but when you see a hurricane and you see how divided the world is now. But when you
Yes, yes,
see
yes.
something like a hurricane or like the fire in Los Angeles now, you see people helping total strangers. They don't care what race they are or what they believe. They're just helping them because people need help. It changes your life. And uh, during the last Hurricane Harvey that I went through, I lived in a high rise across the park from where the refugee center was, where thousands of people were taken. And the hurricane sat on top of Houston for 5 days. So there was a hurricane day and night for 5 days over Houston. And I spent those 5 days walking across the park from where I lived in the hurricane to the refugee center and helping those people as they came in, rescued, and helping them, get dry clothes, find a semblance of privacy in a giant coliseum of people because their family was in disarray. And then after that, another thing about Houston is people move there for work. So a lot of people, they don't have family there. They don't know very many people there. So they would have their homes destroyed and they would have no one to help them. And so I worked with groups and I would go into these houses with other people and they would be sitting there, these owners, just stunned. And we would go into their house, gut their home, get it ready for repair, and then move on to the other. We didn't know them. All we knew is these were people that needed help and had no one to help them. And I did that for weeks, and it changed my life. And I wanted to write about those things too. And that's why it's Murder by Storm, because it's a murder thriller during a hurricane was so I could write about all the
Okay.
things that happened during a hurricane, people helping people, and also the way, because I remember during Harvey, because I'm a criminal and divorce lawyer, right? Uh, Being struck by, there's no police around right now. And there is nothing like floodwater to get rid of DNA that might be part of evidence. There's all sorts of things like that that is different in a hurricane than the normal human lives that we live. And that's all in there too. So
Okay.
you're right.
Okay.
There's lots of truth. There's truth about the crimes, there's truth about the characters, but there's also truth about the environment within the book.
Yeah. So I mean, it's up to you how deep, you want to go about, how much truth there is, from Murder for Me to Murder by Storm. So your characters, so Marilyn is your number one. She's the one that transitions from book to book.
Yes, and I can tell you a weird thing about Maryland. Okay. This is a composite of two people in my life I've known that uh, these people, they're different than the rest of us. We're sheep, they're wolves. They're different species. They're just there to be preyed upon. And when you come across one of these people, you don't forget them. And I've always wanted to write about these people. But when I was first writing the first book and working on it, I actually had a dream one night where, I know this is stupid. It's almost psychotic for me to talk about, but it's true. Where Marilyn came to me, and I was actually writing her with a different name. And she said, "My name's not such and such, it's Marilyn." So the next morning, I woke up and I told my wife, I said, "I dreamed of Marilyn last night." She told me her name was Marilyn. She's like, who's Marilyn? She's like, "Who the hell's Marilyn?" I was like, "It's my character." They came to me in my dream and told me her name was Marilyn. And she said, "You're creeping me
Yeah.
out. Don't tell me stuff like that anymore." So, yes, Marilyn has
So
been
that's how
with me
Marilyn
for
came about.
years. Yes. And in fact, the second book, when I write a book, I have an intellectual challenge to myself about each book that's different. In Murder by Storm, yeah, in Murder for Me, all my readers wanted to know, why how does Marilyn have control over men the way she does? Because she's not the most beautiful woman in the world. This isn't a beauty thing. Okay. How does she do that? And why is she the way she is? Those were the second and third most questions I had, uh, demanding answers. And so in Murder by Storm, I answer who she really is and why she's the way she is. And you might have been that way too if you'd have been like her.
Yeah. Well, she seems like an intriguing figure, a figure that you see a lot in different series and, movies these days. And, myself, when it comes to fiction, even though I know there's a lot of truth in fiction, any fiction book I can possibly read, I'm a fan of thriller. I'm even a fan of watching, thriller series, thriller movies. I've got this, uh, I'm fascinated around murder itself. And not like in a dark way, Like I would sit and I would wonder, like with serial killers, for example, like psychologically, like what makes them do what they do? Because there has to be like a root to it, like some traumatic root for them to actually do what they do. Do they just do it just for the sake of like, okay, no, I just want to kill a bunch of people? And I'm thinking, no, just can't be that, right? There's much more to it, and what turns a person um into a serial killer. An author that I absolutely enjoy reading his books is James Patterson. I've read other thrillers and so on, but when it comes to James Patterson, like his books actually keep you like going and going and going and going just to reach the end. And okay, it's, if it's a series, then that's the worst. That's the worst, because then you have to like get the next one. So like I'm just fascinated, about all this one. That's why I come to these conclusions of that, even though it's labeled as fiction. It's not all that fiction. I just feel like these cases happen out there. Hence why, like, when I was first reading about, okay, when I first was reading about it, was first about the books. And because it was thriller and I saw lawyer, I was like, okay, this must be a criminal attorney. So, my assumption paid off for me because you also do criminal. Because first thing that comes to mind for attorney to be an author, especially a thriller author, there has to be like, experiences, personal experiences for the author that they've gone through, went through to actually initiate writing such a book.
Well, I got
My
to tell
thought.
you, one of the things that struck me about the psychopaths that I've known, which goes back to your questioning, Matt, serial murderers, what are they thinking? My my dealings with them showed me or gave me the impression they always have the front part of what they're doing well planned, but that's it. And the further they go into the plan, the more things fall apart. They don't think out everything. They don't think, they're not 10 chess moves ahead. They're one move. That's all they're thinking about. The next move, right? And that's kind of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
story of these books of how Maryland goes from being two or three chess moves ahead of the know it all East Texas detective, O.C. Sims, that's after her, to her plans falling apart. Because that was my experience with the psychopaths I dealt with. Was they just don't think everything out because they're so narcissistic, right? Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you have known some narcissists, some serious narcissists, because we all do. And they just think they're just going to go through it. They don't think that it's going to go wrong.
Hey, you sort of give them credit for their confidence, you give them that.
Oh, that
Being so
confidence isn't the
confident that it'll
problem.
go well. So, like, okay, so I mean, okay, so from Murder for Me onto Murder by Storm. So of course now there's the character of Larry as well. Now, from what I've read, Larry um, is murdered, and Marilyn seems to be the suspect of that. So he's also a character that goes into book two. So, like, really, like, briefly, like, sum up, like, the two books and then the linkage together and what, like, people can expect without giving them the full extent of what to expect, because of course we want people to read it.
Okay. So, Murder for Me is about the plan that Marilyn is trying to execute to get rid of her boyfriend's wife so that she can marry him, and because he's very, very wealthy. And she gets caught, like all psychopaths wind up getting caught. And how she manipulates her way through the system to escape using this lawyer, Larry Lamb, who's having major psychotic issues. He's two personalities. And through the whole book, you see him struggle and lose his war between Larry Lamb and that personality, which is a family man lawyer, and Lar, which is his other side, that is an extremely dangerous man. And in fact, one of the issues that we talk about as when authors get together, one of those weird issues is when you put sex in a book, what are you using it as a tool for? And during the first book, I used sex. I'm not really the kind of guy that would naturally put sex in a book, okay? I'm not that guy. But I am that guy on using tools. And so you see Larry, as Larry goes from Larry to Lar, and he loses the struggle. for his own sanity. Uh, Sex is used as a symbol of the destructiveness of his own soul, and you see that happen with the different times that that happens in the book. And so, and then you see this detective named O.C. Sims that is also a comical relief in the book, because there's stuff about him that you like I described, and I don't know if you've ever known any man that had this, but he has a mustache that doesn't move at the same way as his mouth. So the mustache moves independently of his mouth. It's the strangest thing. I actually ran across this. I know this guy with his mustache, and whenever he would talk, I couldn't keep my eyes off of him just to watch and see because I couldn't believe it. And uh, that's part of O.C. Sims.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's a know it all, but he does know a lot about a million things. But Marilyn's always a little in front, a little ahead of him during this book. And there's a catastrophic end to the book, is all I can say. And Murder by Storm is him continuing the chase, continuing the chess game of them both, him of OC chasing her and her trying to fend him off while she's doing all of her other schemes, and how they have a massive conflict in the end. And also, there's a love story in the next book too, and that's part of the comical relief of
Oh,
that, because
enough.
in the love story, in the love story, it, it's O.C. Sims. He's in his 50s and he's dating a woman, and they're very serious, and she's a very wonderful woman. And she has a daughter that loves him, and a family, and a dog, which uh, is a whole different story. Because when you put a dog in a story, they seem to try to seize control of your story, which you got to resist. But uh, every time they want to consummate their new love, something funny happens, something bizarre happens. So it never seems to happen, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just the
yeah.
part of the story I wanted to write that. So I was actually the opposite of what I do in Murder for Me. And, but I also write about the secret life of Marilyn, because my one of the intellectual challenges was writing from a woman's perspective as a man. And I found it very difficult, and I had to work very hard to do it. And that was why the editor threw those pages at me that time, because I still hadn't got it right. And she was right. And uh, uh, I really think that I achieved that, but it was difficult. And it was a real intellectual challenge, that because my readers, 80% of which are women, they wanted to know why she was the way she was. And I had to answer that. So I tell about her secret life and why maybe you would be that way too if you were her.
That's a interesting stat. You've just brought up. It makes me, or probably would make a lot of people think like, why is it 80% woman? You know, I think it's because there's women out there that are like, I don't know. Like, well, why? Why do you think? Why do you think it's 80% woman?
Because women are readers, men aren't readers. Women read, women buy books. Over 80% of the books purchased on Amazon are by women. 80% of the
Yeah.
readers of most books are women. Men don't read, women read. That's just a fact.
Okay. There's
I
I
know
also
it's
feel like maybe it's
disturbing,
also
isn't it?
like psycho. Yeah, it is. It is disturbing. It is disturbing. Uh, yeah. Like, I mean, if you never mentioned it now, like, I wouldn't have known. Also, is there some, like, when we read, we get taken into another world. right? Like this world around us doesn't exist anymore. So I mean, maybe there's, you know, an audience out there also that are maybe in the same like persona as Marilyn or think the same, you know,
I
we're trying
hope
to figure
not.
out. Yeah, we hope
I
not.
hope not. But
Um,
I know there is because during the career and in the courtroom, uh, I've come across this before. And in fact, my sister and I were talking just the other day, and she said we were talking about something that I was dealing with for a client. And she was like, I can't even believe that's a part of the world. It's not a part of the world I live in. And my response was, it's a part of my everyday life because I see
yeah, yeah,
and am dealing with uh, the darkness every day. And there's a dark side to this world. And if you're lucky, you can't imagine
yeah,
it.
yeah. Yes.
You can read about it, you can enjoy it, reading about it, but you don't want to be a part of it. But those people, there's a big
100%.
there's people that live in darkness. It's just part of the world we live in.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, you know, my brain always attempts to connect the dots, but 100% is darkness in the world, and it's a choice, you know, you make if you want to be a part of it or not. Life is all about choices. Why I said I was connecting the dots is because on another podcast I'm on every Tuesday, it's called Talking Back to Suicide. And it's co-hosted with a lady who's also in the US from Oregon. So we had a guest on yesterday who said, and he's a relationship expert, like psychologist. So did you know that there's more men in relationships that commit suicide than there is women globally? So that's
Yes,
also,
I believe it.
you know, it's not. Yeah. And then you get, you know, 80%, you know, of women are actually reading. So like with my mind, like I always try to connect the dots, you know, between a world that we actually live in and between like an illusion that many people find themselves in.
Well, I've come to the
So
conclusion that if you can live like a lamb in the illusion of whiteness or niceness or whatever it is that you live in, that's good. If someone lives in that, I'm not going to try to tell them what reality is, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to expose them to the other side of the world because if they live there, let them live there. They're living in a good, happy life. Let them live there. I
yeah, yeah,
don't wish many of the things that I've had to deal with in courtrooms. I don't wish that on people. I do, and have spent the last half of my practice helping pull people out of the darkness uh, any way I can because uh, people, I don't believe people can change, but sometimes people aren't what they appear to be. Sometimes people get in trouble. And I spent the last half of my career getting people out of trouble. And now this is where I was very involved in criminal work, getting especially young men. One of the problems, Keno, in the American system is if you do something small and you get in trouble, if you're a young man and you, you're living your life, but you're not that good at following all the rules. They
yeah,
can, if you get in a little trouble, they can put you on a short 6 month probation. But if you break one little rule, then they extend it for another year. Then if you break it again, then they put you in jail for a little bit. Then they put you more on probation. Then if you break it again, then it might be a felony. And you wind up stuck in a system that grinds you down and destroys you. And that is a part of the American system that's just terrible and it destroys, especially young men's lives. And I spent the last half of my practice trying to save young men, pull them out of that system so they can rescue themselves. right? And uh, so not everyone that is in the system or in trouble, they can still save themselves, but sometimes they need help. And just like you said, what you just said, uh, I spent the last half of my practice saving young men from a system that would never let them get away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, big ups to you for actually, taking on that mandate, you know. Hope they
Sometimes you can't
appreciate you
live
for
with
doing
yourself
that.
without doing stuff, right? That's why you do the suicide show, helping
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, helping people. That's the bigger purpose, for us all in our journey, in our career. It's to help people. Like if I help someone, even if it's one person today, if this podcast helps one person today, um, I've changed someone's life.
But
They now
not
know
only that,
something that they never
I'm a
inspiration.
little bit of a cynic in life, so I don't even say that. I'm just trying to be human. I just don't know how you can be human and see people's young lives get destroyed. I just couldn't do it, right? Even my
Yeah, yeah,
cynical
yeah,
lawyer
yeah,
self couldn't do it.
100%.
But I did try to save one young man at a time.
Nah, nah. Big ups to that. Well done on that. Well done on that. So, what is there going to be a third, fourth, fifth book to the current murder series,
Oh
or
yeah.
they will?
Oh
How
yeah.
far are you
Murder.
hoping to
It's
get
going to
to
be murder by trial. It's going to be about murder during the trial. Uh, if you've ever,
that?
there is a
Murder
great,
during the trial.
yes, murder during the trial. My challenge during this is to write a character in the book. Going to be a new character, uh, and that is so repulsive yet so memorable that you can't, as a reader, ever forget about. That's my purpose. And
Yeah.
I actually, it took me 6 chapters of work before actually found the character, uh, but I want to write about someone so repulsive and so unforgettable that you can't forget about them. And I don't mean gory repulsive. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the weird, so unattractive, repulsive that you think, oh, this is
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
gross, but I have to read it. I have to read the next page anyway. And you think about it as a reader. That's my purpose. And I know that's a weird, bizarre thing, but uh, uh, I cannot think of anything harder to do than to write about a character like that.
Yeah. So, when can readers expect the third book?
Maybe next Christmas. I'm still working on it, and I haven't even faced the editors yet, and you already know how I feel about that.
Yeah. 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 Okay. No, that's perfect. So, I mean, the cherry on top of the cake question is, as a writer in 2025 with artificial intelligence, what is your take on it?
Well, uh, I think AI is here and will explode through all of our lives, but I think it's extremely dangerous. I think of the Microsoft commercial that talks about personal AI, where you can put everything that you think or do into an AI and then it can be your assistant. But then that AI knows everything about what you think and do. I find that incredibly exposing. The only thing is, uh, people much younger than me that are more adapted to technology, they think that's fine. That's okay. Whereas during
Yeah.
my early practice of law, it was a constant war about privacy. That doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. And with AI, there will be no privacy. Microsoft's already advertising personal AI, so it'll know everything about you. But AI is here. Uh, my wife, all my wife's emails, she's a large corporate executive, all her emails are reviewed by AI, and then words change after she tells it how she wants it to communicate. I mean, that's the world we live in. AI is over everything. And the real chat, it's like you can't even go on Facebook anymore and tell what's a real picture or what's an AI picture. And this is a
That's
world
it.
that's going
Yeah.
to get even more confusing. And AI is constantly writing fake news stories or stories that then it submits for short stories. I, I don't, we don't have any more idea of where we're really headed with AI than we did before the first iPhone came out with phones.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
know where they're going.
Yeah. I bring up this question with each creative at the end, just to get their take on it, because it can become a threat to up and coming creators. Because now with AI, you can become an author in 24 hours. Okay.
Or
You know
less.
how long it takes. Yeah. Or less, much less, of course. It depends, if you want to put in the work to edit again, read, type, I don't know. But if you just want to go on first draft, cool. Uh, so there's a lot of anxiety, with creators, and it's going to push a lot of creators to actually just give up on their
Like,
life goals and ambitions and dreams
you can't
because
give
they
up. You
feel,
got
okay,
to go
what,
move
I'm not
forward.
gonna.
And I can tell you
Yeah.
this about AI. AI is doing my Audible book. So my Audible book's going to come out. It will be AI that does it
Yeah.
because you don't want this Texas accent in an Audible book. You wouldn't. Now I would wish listening to this accent for a whole book. I would wish that on nobody.
At least it'll be organic, you know.
I'd wish it on
Okay,
nobody.
thanks. Yeah, thanks for your. So, yeah, what would you say to up and coming creatives out there who are anxious around AI at the moment, who doesn't know which direction to actually should they pursue their careers? Should they still keep going and learn how to adapt to AI and what tools to use and how to be responsible about it and don't be a fraud? Um, what
You're
would
fraud.
you advise them to do?
Well, both you and I've only known you for an hour, would say you don't
Yeah.
quit, right? You go forward. But in the last 30 years, people have had to learn. Those that have been successful have been those that have learned how to adapt. Technology is actually going to move at a faster rate in the next 20 years than it has in the next last 20 years, which is mind blowing in my mind. And you, if you want to be successful and honest, you have to learn how to adapt and learn as you go. It's
Yeah.
absolute. You have to be adaptable.
You have to be adaptable. I would even say in the next 5 years, in the next 5 years, like more would be accomplished in technology than the last 10 years,
That's unbelievable.
daily. I mean, yeah, for myself, like I keep myself like updated on what's going on in the music industry like daily. I'm subscribed to specific platforms that gives me news where I know there's a lot of credibility behind it, and I'm keeping myself updated each day. You sit down, you read on something, and I love to um try out stuff. Like the moment I hear about a new platform, I go deep into it. Like, can I use this as a complement what I'm doing at the moment? Is it going to fit, my career moving forward in this technological era? And I'll get started with that, and maybe I'll implement it here, there, And then, like the next day, there's an article about another company, with another software. And then you're like, okay, cool, because I mean, of course, there's a lot of competition going on. And then you go in and then you try. So it's not even like you could say, you know what, each year I can set my goals of what I'm going to do for this year. Okay, I can set my productions I'm going to do like for this year, but then of course that might also change. But like when it comes to being an entrepreneur, creator slash entrepreneur in this industry, like daily, things are changing and you have to adapt daily now. And that
Yeah.
also can be tiresome for a lot of people out there. But it is what it is, It is what it is. But yeah, thanks, for sharing, your thoughts on it, on what's going to happen. But I mean, it's good also, like, from your end, at least you've already, pushed out books, successfully. So, you've done that, you've done that part. I mean, it's algorithm again. AI is algorithm, just like AI assisted, algorithm. What other possibilities for Kino's next move? That's what the machine is, going to be finding out. But I mean, to master that alone, you're already ahead.
Yes. Thank you. Uh, this has been a great conversation. It went nowhere like I
Yep.
expected. Uh, we wound up talking more about technology than we did anything else. And I'm actually very happy about that. And thank you very much. Actually, I
Yeah.
learned more about your music industry than I have about my own industry.
I tend to get that a lot, eh? Like when people, and sometimes I'll think, okay, was it supposed to end up like that? And then
Yes,
there's
it's
an author
supposed
in
to.
Canada, there's an author in Canada. It's supposed to, okay, at least, thank you for that. So even with him, so like, he comes on, his name is Don Sawyer. So he's also, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. So he's based out in Canada. And it ended up the same way, It ended up in a 1 hour, 30-minute conversation. It was, yes, that we touch on his creative journey, yes, that we touch on his books, yes, but we started talking about all that's happening globally at the moment. The result of that, we ended up starting, a global forum together, bringing in people internationally to talk about, what's going on in the world at the moment. We even brought in, people he's associated with that in war zones at the moment. We brought in different people from different areas just to have a discussion about it. So conversations that go completely a different direction of evaluate, it leads somewhere
Organically.
else.
Can I say
Yeah,
something? You
organically.
are a
Yeah.
master networker. If someone has a question about what they should do in music or writing, they should listen to you. You are a master network. You, that little story you just told was a story of your mastery of networking. That's what you are. That's impressive.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. But also, I like to just, also give credit, where it's due. It wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for phenomenal figures such as yourself within the creator space to come onto the podcast, to share their journey, share their history, share their work, share the tips that you shared about editing, give your thoughts on artificial intelligence, share your organic stories. If I don't have that on the show, the show is, not worth much at the end. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing, all about yourself and your work. And I'm sure there's much more. And so I would like to conclude with, where can people find you online? Where can they learn more about you?
Okay. My author page is russelllittleauthor.com. Uh, that's you can see other interviews, podcasts, the awards. I just got an award. Firebird is very excited about that. Uh,
Nice.
Stories. You can see all of that there. If you want to know about what I'm doing day to day, you can go to the Facebook page Russell Stories and join that
Russell
because,
Stories.
like, right before I got on here, I actually posted that I was going to be on this show and how excited I was. And after I
Nice.
get off this show, I'll post about this show. And when uh, it's available, I will post it on that page because so if you really want to know what I'm doing as a writer or my particular I'm kind of a Russophile. I love Russian literature. I love great literature. So I'm always posting about great literature or Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, something like that. If you, I post stuff about that too. I'm also a Stoic, so I will post stuff about Marcus Aurelius or Cicero on those pages. So if you want to know what I'm doing or what I'm thinking that day, you're invited over to see me there. And you can also
Thank
ask
you.
me questions there.
I'm going to go check out the page straight after this conversation. Yeah.
And
Okay.
Keno,
So I'll also
where can we, where can we find out what else Keno's doing?
all you have to do is go out to Google and search Kino Isaac, or you can search the Kino Isaac podcast. But if you search Kino Isaac, my musical artist verified profile will pop up. There you're going to get more information about my music itself and links to that. If you search the Kino Isaac podcast, that will give you all the links that you could ever need to go to any one of the platforms, that is posted on. My main platform that I do focus on for my music and the podcast is Spotify. I'm not really a YouTuber. I've recently started a YouTube channel under my consulting agency. Like I felt there was a need for more consulting in the independent space, especially with the lower and middle income earners uh, globally. Not even just like with South Africa or Africa. And there was a tension that needed to be there. So what
I
I
agree
do,
with that.
all that I learn and all the knowledge that I've consumed over the years, all that I still consume daily because learning never stops. It really never stops, honestly speaking. So what I do is I consult for independent artists and independent labels. As I said, you can search Kino Isaac or Kino Isaac Consulting Agency. That will take you to my website, where independent artists can reach out to me. But also with the authors that have come onto the podcast over the last 3 months, I also want to now start reaching out to more independent authors that got no direction. So when it comes to my mandate or my purpose, it's for people to give back and to actually grow the creative space, as I continue to grow. There's not enough tension there, especially for mainstream. Like an example I would use is like you get these, singing competitions and you get like 100 singers, or rappers that will sign up for it. There can only be one winner. So the 99 that have actually committed and signed up for it, even though whatever it was that they never win, they tend to give up on themselves. Okay, I can't be a singer anymore. That's it. My dream, my passion is destroyed. I'm there to say it's not. That's what I am there to say it's not. You can become an independent. You can do it on your own. Stop focusing on getting a 360 record label deal. You don't need the labels anymore. You don't even need the publishers anymore. But if you want a publisher, cool, no problem. You can go for it. But taking the advice from Russell, do your first one yourself, do it right. The publishers, editors will be knocking on your door. So I'm there to educate, and that's what the podcast is there also, to educate, but educate in a very non-traditional manner. The advice that you can get on this podcast alone is enough to get you to the next stage of your career.
I agree.
Yeah. I've also been labeled an activist for independent artists. I focus on mental health a lot as well. Hence why I got invited to co-host, talking back to suicide. Diana Kaufman, she's a psychologist based in the US. She invited me. She was one of my first guests on the podcast. So she invited me to co-host that podcast with her, like a focus on mental illness, because it's due to my own personal experiences, growing up as an artist and all the trauma that I had to eliminate from my subconscious to actually move to the next level of my career and life. And I want artists to know that happiness comes before financial gain. So you might find, or you've seen a lot of artists out there that have gained financially at the start, but you never know what contracts and what deals were actually in place. They never knew that they actually own nothing. Substance abuse has led to suicide. All those stuff has happened. So what I attempt to do is eliminate the trauma first, through counseling, through therapy. If I can't resolve it myself, then I'll bring in an expert that I do know, whether we do it virtually or whether we do it, face to face with the artist, to get that out the way. Because as the artist continues to grow and grow and grow, they're going to live a more happier, fulfilling life. They're actually going to enjoy the process. But if you're chasing the financial gains as an artist, you just got to keep chasing and chasing and chasing. And let's just say, okay, cool, I have $1 million now. I'm flying high. And next thing you know, you haven't fixed the trauma that's out there. It comes back to actually, eat you alive. You end up losing it all because of that trauma. So that's, what I also work at.
I'm glad you said that.
Based on personal experience. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's me. But yeah. That sums up your question, I guess.
Yes, I like the answer.
Yeah. But Russell, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And all the best with part 3, which is going to take up bulk of this year. All the best, and I wish you all the best and continuous growth for book 1 and book 2. And keep doing what you do.
Thank you. It's been a real honor. I've really enjoyed it, Kino.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed
Okay.
what you've had to
And
say too. You have a lot to say, and thank you for saying it.
yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's too much to say,
It's not too
It's like
much.
asking Kino, yeah, what do you do? It can become complex at times, for people to really understand, what's the purpose behind it of what I do. Is it just creating the music and being the producer behind all the tracks? I go, no, it isn't.
No.
There's much
It's
more
the
to it.
purpose of your
It's one
life, though.
component of it. Yeah.
All of this is the purpose
It's
of
it.
your life. All
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
100%. 100%. Anyway, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, once again, best wishes. Best wishes. We never know where we will meet again.
Have a great
And
day.
that also happens a lot. That also happens a lot, especially with podcasts. You end up going on another podcast. It even happened yesterday. End up on
And
another
then you'll
podcast. I'm
be
like, I
there.
know you.
Yes. I actually hope that
You know?
happens.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and enjoy.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
You too. Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.